So many people get trapped in the idea that you've got one self, one ego. That's not true. We have many sides of ourselves. Alter egos are they're a part of our human psyche. Everyone's used them. We do this naturally as young children. We play around with, what can I do if I jump off of the sofa as Superman or Batman? How far can I go? How I ended up finding this as a tool that I used when working with athletes, the power of building your own mental movie theater in your mind where you go and you practice your skills, you start to associate yourself with doing something so that when the time comes, you can more comfortably execute it in a flawless fashion. Every single one of you here already knows how to do this. You've forgotten its use because you're trying to act through the adult ego, and it traps you. Because the creative imagination is our real superpower as human beings. I'm doing this because I want to bring the best of me out there. I've battled depression all of my entire life. I had a very traumatic experience, a sexual assault that happened to me when I was 12. So I was at this camp and I kind of got singled out by these two men, and then over the course of a couple of days was sexually abused and assaulted. And I just remember through the experience just wishing that my dad would come through the door. I don't care if people would judge me because of that. I'm proud of the fact that I did a lot of things, despite the fact that those things tried to get in my way. And that's also why I got into the world of mental game stuff, because I needed it for me. When you start to take control of how you want to be showing up, the results that you get can be extraordinary. I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be, and I finally became that person, or he became me. But at some point, we met.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... Have you ever used an alter ego? Like some days you're Clark Kent, but then you want to turn into Superman to get something done. Well, this week's guest talks exactly about that. Todd Herman has a new book out called The Alter Ego Effect, and he claims that if we can channel into an alter ego, we can be in certain states in various different situations. And sometimes you want to be Superman, and sometimes you need to be Clark Kent. And Todd has worked over 15,000 hours with major athletes, and almost all of the top 100 athletes in the world use that alter ego when they go on the field and they need to channel greatness. In fact, studies have shown that when you even put on a doctor's lab coat, you become more meticulous to detail. So we all have it within us. And funny enough, I've started experimenting on this with the London Real Academy, and now every one of my students channels an alter ego when it comes to the course, and the results have been incredible. So I want you to watch this episode and start thinking about who could your alter ego be. Is it Super You, or is it your name with Dan Pena involved as well? Think about this, and now enjoy this incredible episode with Todd Herman. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Todd Herman, the American author, speaker, and performance coach to Olympic athletes, corporate CEOs, and billionaires. You've logged over 15,000 hours working one-on-one with clients, and you've been featured on the Today Show, Sky News, and CBS. Your latest book, The Alter Ego Effect, is a Wall Street Journal bestseller and teaches people how to activate their heroic self to achieve high performance. Todd, welcome to London Real.
Thank you, man. This is very exciting. We met a long time ago, and I've wanted to come and sit down in this chair with you for a long time. One correction.
Yes.
I am a Canadian that lives in America.
Of course.
That's so, to give a shout out back to my red and whites back in Canada.
No, I'm really glad you cleared that up, man.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I'm excited. We got tons to talk to. We've known each other for 3 or 4 years. I'm glad you made it over here. And look, that book IP is fascinating stuff, and I want to talk about everything. So
Yeah.
super excited. First of all, what's it like coming to London? You know, what does this city, I don't know, represent to you? What does it feel like when you come here, when you think about it, even from New York City where you're based?
Yeah, this is it's interesting for the Canadian side of me, you know, as a Commonwealther, it's great to get back to the motherland. I've got ancestors that come from this part of the world, so it's great to get back from that side. Culturally, it was also we're filming this around Remembrance Day, and it was fantastic to be here during Remembrance Day weekend and experience that as I had a grandfather who fought in the war and stuff. So, but I love the culture here. I was here for quite a while as well. So it's good to get back, but it's changed as everything has been changing too.
Yeah, because you lived here in 05, 06,
Yeah,
so
I was here
you
for
know.
quite a while, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more buildings, there's a lot more people, a lot more development. It's a great city.
Yeah,
I was just in New York last week. I saw you at the Pencils of Promise Gala, which was awesome, and I love New York and I love London.
Yeah, they're sister cities in so many ways. The ambition that's there, because again, it's not easy to be living in either of those cities. You know, like if you're living in that city, hopefully you're there for a purpose, because otherwise, go, because it's so expensive. You know, you can have a higher quality of life in other areas, but if you're there to soak up and be around really ambitious people, there's no two better places to be than London and New York City.
Yeah, I always say, talk about the weather in London, and I'm always like, yeah, it keeps the suckers out. Yeah. Like you got to really want to be here, because there's Miami and LA and all those other places. But yeah, it's a place I love, man. It's home now. So
good.
Look, man, I'd love to jump into the book. And on kind of a surface level, this concept is something I've seen before and I've come up across. I remember reading an interview with Beyonce and her talking about this Sasha Fierce character. And that's one of the first times I heard someone really admit it on her level that wasn't like a hip hop rapper that had an alter ego. Then for all my favorite hip hop guys, like Ice-T, I was a big fan of, Ice Cube, they all had these names that I'm guessing were also alter egos. And I had David Goggins in here, who's got his alter ego, which is creatively named Goggins, right? Yeah. And for him, most people don't understand, Dave, was this kind of out of shape, dejected, self-described loser of a fat man. Yeah. And when he turned into Goggins, that allowed him to channel into these bigger things. Yeah. But at the same time, we're never taught this is okay as kids, right? Yeah. It's okay when you're a little kid to play around. I mean, my son Caden had a Batman shirt on this morning when I left him. Yeah. And I didn't even think about that. Yeah. So it's something we kind of know, but then when we grow up, we're not allowed to do it, but you can do it if you're an entertainer somehow. Yeah. And you worked your whole life one-on-one with all of these athletes and top-level people. So maybe you can explain why this is not only just an interesting concept, but it's a crucial concept, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point about kids, we do this naturally as young children. We play around with, what can I do if I jump off of the sofa as Superman or Batman? How far can I go? Or we're in our front driveway and we're bouncing the ball, or we're playing on a sport in a park, and it's like, okay, well, and kids do this. They say, okay, well, who are you going to be? And I'm going to be Wayne Gretzky, or I'm going to be Michael Jordan, or like whatever the sport is, or I'll be Lionel Messi and you be Cristiano Ronaldo. And it's because we go to that place in our head of what could I do if I wasn't whatever you perceive yourself as right now? Because we all have this sometimes destructive narrative on what we think that we can and cannot do. But when we ask ourselves the question, but what could I do if I was Brian Rose and I could show up in that confident way that he does, with so many different, big personalities sitting across from him? What if I could own that state? Because I mean, you do, you show up in a very calm, confident manner, which is brilliant, right? So other people can see that. Oh, I wish I had that. Well, we can do that, but we do it naturally as kids. Right. So I want to break this down from a scientific perspective for people too, because a big part of the pursuit of my company is that we always back things up with scientific research, not just experience and anecdote.
Right. Okay. And this is what makes you different: practical experience and scientific research. Yeah. Because we'll get into this later. You're a bit frustrated with people that put out information that isn't based on one-on-one practical coaching and also real science.
That's right.
And these days, since publishing's so easy, there's a lot of ideas floating around out there which you don't buy into.
Yeah, well, that's the frustrating thing, is that we live in an influencer culture where people like to put out cotton candy, bubble gum, and popsicle stuff. It tastes sweet. We like the idea. I wish that Because again, selling hope, that's very easy. But selling meat and potatoes and kale, which is what I do, that doesn't look attractive. But I can tell you what, it satiates the appetite for whatever the ambition is that you have, because it's going to digest and it's going to give you the nutrients that you need in order to make the change happen. And so getting back to this concept though, of why do children do this so well, specifically between the ages of 1 and 7? The reason that they do it so well is because they're working in what's called the theta brainwave state, which is the creative imagination state, really, just to use a simple term.
You get it in floating chambers and things like that,
yeah,
right? Or deep meditation, you can get into theta sometimes?
Exactly. Okay. So there's 4 levels. There's delta, theta, alpha, and beta. Beta is like someone that could be watching us right now and they're like sort of judging and reasoning, trying to come to terms, okay, well, what's this guy saying and stuff? And we do this, we judge and we reason. That's the beta, kind of like, and then when we get into real focus, that's typically alpha brainwave state, when you're kind of starting to get real focus. You're not in flow state.
Right.
You're really focused on something. Theta is the flow state and the zone state, where literally that's where all of your capabilities start flowing out of you, unfettered and without the friction of the judgment and the worry of what other people are thinking of you. So you're very much locked into the present and the process. So children do that from 1 to 7. When you take a look at the fastest growth of any period in our lives when we're developing skills and understanding, that's the age, right? I mean, a lot of people say that by the age of 8, that's typically where your personality is kind of set.
Is that true?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not true.
Okay.
Because that would think that we're just baked. Right. That's a fixed mindset, as Carol Dweck would call it, or growth mindset is that no, we are a constantly unraveling self that can develop. Why? Because of neuroplasticity. We can learn new things. And that makes sense to many. Like when you actually break it down, people are like, yeah, I have learned things after 8. And some of those things did change how I see the world and also changed my personality. So, but I will say this.
There's a lot happening.
There's a lot of stuff that's very baked at 8. So the work that you do after 8 needs more effort to crack through that for some people.
Yeah.
Anyway, so kids play with that idea to step into new roles and play around and whatnot. And the theta brainwave state for any parent, I've got 3 little ones under the age of 6 or 6 and under. If you've ever had to yell at them 7 times to come to the dinner table and they haven't come and you're getting frustrated, just know it's because they're actually in the state that you wish you could get in when you're working. They're just caught in the moment.
Right.
So typically coming over and tapping them on the shoulder, you've got to do a state change with them. That's a better thing. Okay. So anyways, we do this as kids, and then what happens? Our frontal lobe starts to develop. We develop judgment reasoning skills. And we also start to look to the future more, because now we've got the ability to now forecast, use forethought, because that skill is now developing. And I take a look at someone who's 13. I think you probably did it too. You look at someone who's older than you, like 3 years old, and I'm like, man, I can't wait till I'm 13, because you see what they're able to do now. Or they're bigger or taller, or they're faster or stronger, and you're like, I can't wait till I'm 13 too. Mm-hmm. And so we all start now living into the future. And I can't wait till I'm 15, 17. And then you look at what adults do, and they're like, oh, as I grow older, apparently I get more serious, and I get more pragmatic, and I get more practical. And so all those things that I was doing as a kid were childish. Let's leave those things alone. And then we move away from those things, those traits, those qualities, those abilities that actually helped us develop really rapidly, find ourselves more quickly, because we perceive it as being childish, and yet they were the very things that helped you do difficult things and challenging things, like learn how to ride a bike, learn to associate with other people, a parent, an adult, someone else in society. Okay, so now how I ended up finding this as a tool that I used when working with athletes. I did this when I played football, and I was a college football player who had a scholarship. I was a nationally ranked badminton player back in Canada as well. Okay. Football, badminton, they always go together quite well. But I just loved sport. But I was always so insecure about how skinny I was. I was one of those kids, I just could not put on any weight whatsoever. I was tall, or tallish, I was 6 foot, but I was 156 pounds soaking wet. But I had this destroyer mentality when I went on the football field. But if I was attaching that to Todd, who's the skinny guy, didn't seem to work. So I built out an alter ego that was going to go out and play for me. And it was a composite of my 2 superhero inspirations in football, Walter Payton and Ronnie Lott. And the other two were, or the rest of it was a tribe of Native American warriors. Where I grew up in this big ranch and farm in Western Canada, and it's rich in Native American history all around us. And I used to get on my horse Cracker Jack and ride around on the farm and try to find the old fire rocks and dig around for arrowheads and just artifacts. And as a kid, and I was just romantically just so infatuated with that culture and the warrior mentality that they had.
Did you have a name for yourself?
I did, which is, I talk about in the book, the importance of giving something a name. And it was Geronimo. So Geronimo, and actually, can I walk through with people how, because it can actually teach them how to actually build a mental movie theater in your own head.
Because I'm trying to think of what my name needs to be. So but the movie and all that. So please walk us through.
So one of the things I teach people about is the power of building your own mental movie theater in your mind, where you go and you practice your skills, you start to associate yourself with doing something so that when the time comes, you can more comfortably execute it in a flawless fashion, right? And because the brain, when you're experiencing something that's new, will go to a place of, it'll look for pattern. If it can't find it, it'll go to a default mode of however you normally respond in a situation. So if you're a shy, nervous person, you're going to show up now shy and nervous, despite the fact this is a great opportunity. You've just met someone who could be a great partner in your business, or someone that you've always wanted to connect with, but you don't go up and introduce yourself, or you're in the boardroom and there's an opportunity for you to say something with a great idea, but then you don't because you're concerned about what everyone else is going to think of you.
Right. And you have the idea and you have the credibility, you just don't do it.
You just don't do it.
Right.
Yeah. So you had the capability, but it didn't get out. Okay. So the mental movie theater. So I had this, I go inside, first I'm in the locker room and I'm getting ready. I just put on my shoulder pads. The jersey isn't on top yet. And I would had my helmet next to me, and I had 5 trading cards, like football trading cards. 3 were of Walter Payton and 2 were of Ronnie Lott. And we're gonna get to why I had a physical thing later.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I go into my mind, close my eyes, and I start to imagine me walking into the door of this crushed red velvet movie theater, like old school, and that's where I would go and I would think about things. And on the screen, I would walk in, and to my left, as I turned, there's this big movie screen that I could go and watch me do something, or I would also imagine myself jumping into it as well, so I could experience it in the first person as well.
Okay, nice.
So there's the observer watching me, and then there's the experiencer. Those are 2 different types of imagining. One can be easier than the other for people. There's always going to be one that's easier for someone else. Some people can experience it easier than watching themselves do it. Others can watch themselves do it easier than physically almost experiencing it.
Yeah.
So just a distinction I want to make with people, because I've done this for a long time and people get tripped up with that.
Because if you use one, sometimes you don't connect. This comes with coaching.
Yes.
You find that
practice.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Comes with coaching. Again, this is the value of getting around people who've got one-on-one work, right? Like, 'cause again, these are the questions that come up with people. So anyways, I walk in, but there's also 2 doors at the other end of my movie theater. And I built them because I needed them for the work I was doing. So through the one door would walk Walter Payton and Ronnie Lott. Walter Payton, Hall of Fame running back football player for the Chicago Bears, total hero of mine.
You're dating yourself with Walter Payton and trading cards, by the way.
Yeah,
You have to
I
explain
know.
that to some of the youngsters.
I'm
but
okay, I'll own it.
That's cool. I know who he is.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Ronnie Lott, who was an absolute devastating, again, Hall of Fame safety for the San Francisco 49ers, just an absolute beast out there. Because in high school, if you're a good athlete, you play both sides of the ball. You're never coming off. So I played offense and defense and special teams. So they come walking in, and then through the other door came a tribe of 5 Native American warriors, led by Geronimo. Okay. So they all walked towards me, and Geronimo's holding 5 trading cards in his hand. So they'd walk towards me, and as they approached, Walter Payton would say to me, take each of these 5 trading cards as a representation and an embodiment of how all of us would show up on that field with you. And that's when Geronimo would hold out his hand with the 5 cards. And then I would reach out and I would grab them. So now we're both holding them. And then I would go to pull them away. Even in my own mind, I'd pull them away. But then Geronimo would tighten up and he'd pull them, tug them back, as Walter Payton would say to me, but don't you dare, he'd lean in, don't you dare dishonor our memory and how we would show up by not bringing all of us onto that field to like cement that emotional connection.
That's heavy, man.
Yeah.
Walter's saying that to you. That's pretty deep.
I know.
Okay.
And so then Geronimo would release and I would take them. Okay, so now I have them. Now I'd open up my eyes and I would turn and I'd grab the 5 trading cards off the thing. And I'd take one of Walter Payton's and I'd stuff it inside my helmet because I wanted to think like him. I would take his other 2 and I'd stuff them inside my thigh pads because I wanted to run like him. And then I took Ronnie Lott's and I'd shove them inside of my shoulder pads because I wanted to hit like him. And then I'd put on my helmet, so my jersey would go on now, and I'd kind of get up and get myself sort of dressed more. And then I would put on my helmet and leave the chin strap unbuckled. And when it was go time, that's when I would snap it shut, and that's when I would feel the tribe of Native American warriors rush into me. And that's who I was going to, with their conviction, take out onto that field. So there was a mind, heart, body, all connection, all that kind of stuff.
That sounds so intense that it always makes me worry, like if you still have to wait 15 minutes to go on the field, does it drop? Or can you hold that intensity
Hold it. That's why.
For a couple hours, but not for a couple days.
No, not for a couple days. No, there's no need. That's
but for
why
the game time you can.
Okay. But that's such an important distinction, Brian, because so many people get trapped in the idea that you've got one self, one ego. That's not true. We have many sides of ourselves. I talk about it in the book, like just the research that's been done in the world of psychology and how they've actually flipped the script on something that they held true for a very long time that isn't true anymore. And it's that they always thought that people who had one self and one identity were the healthiest mentally, lowest rates of depression or anxiety and stress or mood disorders. But me, on the field, I'm like, wait a second. My NFL guy or my, guy who's playing somewhere in FIFA or PGA, he's very different off the field when it comes off. You don't want some of my guys coming off the field and being that way in the regular world.
Yeah, we don't want you as Geronimo now.
As a parent either. Right. My kids don't want that.
Well, that's the thing. You become Mr. Rogers when you're at home.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. I don't want to take away from it.
Yeah.
We'll get there. But I thought that was fascinating that you would have an alter ego of this, guy in a sweater when you're at home. But it made total sense. And I mean, I guess we'll get into that at some point.
But that's the fun. Okay. I love this because it allows people to become what I think is the missing key in our society right now, which is way more playful. Like, I'm an intense person, I know it, but I've lived this work now for 22 years, since 97 when I started doing this, and just seeing the transformations that happen for people across many domains of their lives, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's on a stage, whether it's, on video cameras, or whether it's on the field, court, ice, whatever it is so fun because people start to relate to themselves in different ways. And, what's the most challenging, like when you got started out, Brian, what was the most challenging page that you had to write on your website?
Challenging page?
Yeah.
Probably like the About Us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks for giving the right answer.
Okay.
It's the About page.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're writing this About page in context to the people that maybe we want to bring into our world. But when you're writing it, you're like, I know it. You're more than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then for the other people that are out there, the other most challenging piece of paper you'll ever write is your CV or your resume, right? Because you're like, oh, I only have so many bullet points here. Which bullet point should I put in? Because I'm way more than all of this, right? Of course it's difficult because there's so many different roles and identities that you've got in your life. And that should be a signal to people. Like, that's why the stuff that I talk about people, at the end of these interviews, people go, you know what? That just makes sense.
Right.
Why? Because it tracks back to how you're actually living your life. That should be a signal to many people that when you're out there and you're trying to pursue change in whatever domain and field that you're concerned about changing, if it doesn't resonate at a root level, like there's something that's really off about that, that should be a signal that it's not really rooted in the science of how we work or the science of how success happens on that field, or you've never seen anyone even do that before. Like that's a mismatch. Yeah. And so then you go to the messenger. Okay, did the messenger research and regurgitate other information and just propagate stuff that's already out there because they want to be perceived as an expert on that topic? Or were they actually on the field with someone, working with them, with a lot of hours underneath their belt? Like, I typically want to see at least 1,000 hours of work underneath someone's belt before I would engage with them to work with them.
Understood.
So
Geronimo, so anything else to talk about that transformation?
yeah,
That's
so then
to show people
I
that
snapped. The one thing I want to say is sound
yeah.
is a phenomenal trigger for the device when you want to like activate a self out there. And
touching yourself as well, you're hitting your heart or whatever.
yeah, like just
Tony Robbins does the spin before he goes on stage.
yeah, I see him do that.
That's the thing. Yeah, but he does like a boom boom spin, and then he turns into the guy and goes on stage. So.
He goes in, he activates that self, and the purpose of that is because one of the key things that I talk about in the book is when you start to take control of how you want to be showing up on that field of play or in that role, like you're deciding how you want to show up, and you're not going to be trapped typically, which is what happens to people. And I use the word trap specifically because that's the most common term that people use when they feel like they're not performing like they know that they can, or they feel like there's something outside of them in their environment, maybe other people, the politics of a situation, the circumstance, they feel like they're trapped by it.
Right. It's what you call the ordinary world.
The ordinary
people
world.
Feel trapped in the ordinary world. You want to get them into the extraordinary world where they can be heroic.
Yeah. And when I say heroic to you. The results that you get can be extraordinary. There's no difference in the two worlds in the fact that they're both challenging. There's goblins and demons and, briar bushes that you got to walk through and brambles that you got to try and, get around and stuff. So there's no difference that way. The extraordinary world isn't cotton candy. No. It's that you have equipped yourself with mental tools, skills that are going to help you walk that with a heck of a lot more courage, grit, perseverance, and a playful mind. Because the playful mind is that golden key that finally unlocks the door into zone and flow state. I've just seen it thousands of times. Because people think the zone and the flow state, that amazing place where you're just so engrossed in the moment, is this mythical point that you maybe get to 1 or 2 times in a season or in a year or in a week if you're a writer or creator or executive or something like that. No, it's a biological process and it's a mental process that when you start toppling the dominoes, the likelihood of it coming to you just increases exponentially. And playfulness was that sort of just because it's an openness that happens.
Right. I just had Michael Venom Page in here last week, who's one of the big top fighters in Bellator. You would have seen him. He does these walk-away knockouts and all these funny, goofy stuff, these wind-up punches. I know Michael for about 4 years, but he does the same thing. When he's in there, he's like, Brian, I'm playful. He can hear the corner speaking. He's goofing around. He said that allows me to be relaxed and enjoy the moment, and that leads that I'm not tense. And I'm not trying to be the tough guy fighter. And you see it, Jorge Masvidal does it at the UFC. You see some people at the top do it, but you don't see a lot of people do it.
Kamaru Usman talks about the Nigerian nightmare. And he's like outside of the ring, he's playful guy, like he's very approachable, nice guy. But he talks about, hey, when I step through the cage, that's where the Nigerian nightmare lives, is out on that field or out on that in that octagon. And it's like, look out. And then even Kobe Bryant with the Black Mamba. What people don't get about Kobe and the Black Mamba, he didn't have that when he was in high school. He didn't have that when he came into the NBA. He activated the Black Mamba when he was going through an identity crisis. When he was going through that sexual assault case that was happening in Colorado, he was being accused of, and with the allegations. And he felt like he was losing his identity, felt like he was losing his edge. So he was watching Kill Bill, and in this, there's a scene with the Black Mamba, and he's like, "Wait, that's who needs to be taken out onto that court. Is the Black Mamba?" And then he talks about how even when he's in the locker room, there's a transition that happens, and that's when he activates the Black Mamba, and it's just like just look out. And he's like, he imagines in his head. Just like I was in my mental movie theater, he imagines in his head that he had, the Black Mamba was in a cage. And it's like, I didn't go near the cage any other time because that was a dangerous place. But I opened up the cage to let the Black Mamba out, to go out there and destroy things on that court or whatever. Now that's an intense thing, right? Yeah. To go back to your point you said about me with like Mr. Rogers. Now imagine me. when I go home, I'm a challenging personality type. Like I'm working with like top achievers like you all day long and, athletes, and I'm going from call to call, or, I'm creating training programs and unpacking systems and, working with people. I really want to understand how to level up everybody with real stuff, not fake stuff, like real stuff. And I love it every single day. But the last thing that my 3 little kids at home in New York City need is that challenger personality type.
Have you been that dad before?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And
that husband before?
And I made mistakes with it. Now, I'm not judging myself because we're human beings. But I'm good at coaching, and I caught myself. And where I caught myself was with my daughter Sophie, who it's Molly, Sophie, and Charlie. Charlie's 2.5, and he will probably bring down New York City. He's an absolute just breaker of everything.
Okay, like a bruiser.
He's a bruiser.
Yeah,
and
my youngest is the same.
But at the same time, he's a sweet little kid. But Sophie, she has this amazing emotional bandwidth. She has incredible highs, and when she has a tantrum, it can be an incredible, and it can stay there too. And, when she would go into that tantrum, that's a force. That's an emotional force. And again, they're just bundles of emotional energy. It's an emotional force. And so what do I do as dad? Meet that force with big dad showing up. It's like, stop that right now, enough. There's not even because you're freaking out over the fact that I brought you the Elsa spoon and not the Anna spoon. Come on. So anyway, and then I caught myself and I'm like, wait a second, Todd, what are you doing? Better. And then I was like, okay, so I'm bringing this work identity home with me, and I haven't created the new identity that I haven't really shaped it. Because I like to find sources of inspiration for how I want to show up. People that have already done it, because human beings love to map and model things, because it makes it easier for us to then execute whatever the skill is that we want. And I immediately went to my father. I'm a huge extrovert. My dad's quiet and introverted. He's a rancher and farmer, man of very few words. When he spoke in prophetic cliches kind of thing. But
like Roy Rogers.
Yeah, he just had some great stuff that he shared. I was very lucky to have the parents I got. But Mr. Rogers as well. Because if a challenger personality sits on this end of the spectrum, Mr. Rogers sits on this end of the spectrum because he wasn't a challenger. Right. He was patient. He was playful. He was really kind. And I was like, wait a second, those are the traits that I want to bring to being a dad when I'm at home. Now let's play with that stuff. Because my experience of working with people is every trait, every emotional quality that's needed to be successful is already inside. We're born with it. And it's just that we get trapped by our identities and how we describe ourselves with our egos of, it's like, well, I'm a pocket square guy. I was just telling you, it's like I'm buttoned up or something. Right. I was telling you earlier that when I go on stages and I speak, I wear a t-shirt and a zip-up sweater, because I know that sometimes people who wear this can come across as intimidating, or that, the perception is that person's trying to be too perfect or something. You and I wear this stuff. I like it. I love that you wear that stuff. It looks freaking amazing. You wear it well.
Thanks. I've learned.
Yeah.
But for you realized it was separating you from your audience, and so you were like, let me just dial that down.
Yeah. And I wanted to be more playful on stage too.
Right.
And so and there's all sorts of science behind this, which I just geek out on. But so Mr. Rogers and my dad became my inspiration. And so in that situation, if Sophie's going to have a freak out, how would Mr. Rogers respond in that moment? Well, I know how he would respond, because I've seen enough of his shows growing up and know enough about him as a human afterwards. Is he would get down on one knee immediately, again, match eye to eye, get down on their level.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to communicate with words, they don't understand that much. They don't understand that as much. But what they do understand is action. So then I would immediately grab Sophie and bring her in, and I'd just give her a big hug and a squeeze. Don't say anything. Say, I got you, honey. That's it. Just, I got you. And the first time I did it, which was about 2 hours after that one meltdown, when I caught myself, not acting like I'd want to, she melted immediately. Her torment or her tantrum would typically go on for say 8 minutes or 12 minutes. It was done in 8 seconds, 10 seconds. And then immediately she ran off to go play, completely forgetting about whatever it was.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that right there is the moment where you've activated a heroic self. when you got to actually apply the traits of what you wanted to show up with, because that's the feeling you get. You're like, there's this like internal moment of like, fuck, that was a good.
I did it. I was the right guy in the right moment.
Dad.
And
good job, Dad.
Right. I did the right thing.
And it felt great because she calmed down. And I mean, you want to see your kids happy and playful and doing their thing.
So how many of these alter egos do you have?
4.
4. Okay.
4 that I specifically will activate with people. And that's in 4 very important roles that I play in my life, right? Because again, we have many egos that we play through. We have many roles in life. So we've got the ego and the ego is typically the trapped self. We defend it, like, well, this, and it's not a healthy thing. So then the alter ego there is to create the super self, the best self, the best version of you in that. And so I've got 4 specific areas that I'm really developing right now.
Can you tell us what they are?
Yeah, so there's the leader in my business, okay, that works with the team, and that's Super Richard. So we're giving it names.
Right. Okay.
And then on stage, and when I'm creating some content, it's Playful Hugh.
Okay.
And so that's me honoring the person who I'm inspired to act through on stage, which is oh my goodness.
Hugh Grant. No,
not Hugh Grant.
No,
it's not Hugh Grant.
It's the Wolverine guy.
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Why him?
Because he's got I just really resonate with him. Like I really like him. I've always liked him as an actor. Seeing him in enough interviews, he's
not what you think, right?
He's very thoughtful.
Yeah,
he's very playful. He's a jokester too. But the thing there is like there's one word in particular that I'm attaching to is that playfulness thing.
Okay.
Because my wife had told me a little while ago, I was sharing with you earlier, that the great frustration that she would have with, say, the personal brand of Todd is that she's like, I fell in love with you because you were one of the funniest guys I've ever met. And that doesn't come out.
It doesn't come out on your website.
It doesn't come on your website. It doesn't come out in the content, and that's because I talk about like maybe intense things or whatever. But so I'm leaning into that stuff way more because that is a huge part of who I am. I'm totally the jokester. When you work in sport, there's a lot of trash talk behind the scenes. Yeah. I love to needle people and give them, you're Brian right now, but there will be a nickname that comes up maybe in the interview at some point.
I hope so. I need one.
But I love that side of things. So I think, again, we take life very seriously, and I'm very honest with that because I've taken life very seriously. And it's been a trap at times. So playfulness. Okay. So Playful Hugh.
Playful Hugh. Serious Richard.
Super Richard.
Super Richard, right? Okay.
Playful Hugh. Lord Vader.
Okay.
Lord Vader is the version of me that I use when I'm writing.
Okay.
And so, again, not to freak people out with this stuff, but this is the playful side of this. I want to give people, whether they judge or not, I don't really care. I'm just giving people how those people who get to operate at a top level are operating. So I have a perfect working replica of the Darth Vader mask, sound and everything, like the breathing as I breathe. Even when I talk, it would come out as the Vader voice or whatever.
This is real talk now.
This is real talk.
I love
right?
it. All right, yeah. So you got one of these.
So I've got one of those.
Okay.
It sits. If you see interviews with me at my office, you'll see it sitting behind me. Sometimes it's in the picture, sometimes it's not, but it's sitting behind me. That's where I keep it. And so I'm dyslexic, okay? And I'm an auditory guy. Like I can speak things out better than I could write them.
Okay.
But when I was going through the writing of my book, because I wrote that book, I had a ghostwriter that I worked with to get the first draft done, and then I took it over and finished it off with the stories and stuff. Boy, you talk about resistance, because I did not have a healthy identity as a writer. I did not see myself that way. But I was like, who wouldn't give a shit about how they think and how they're being perceived? And I'm a huge Star Wars guy. And I love the dark side as well. Because light, dark. So I'm like, oh, it's Lord Vader. So I went online, bought like a $500 Darth Vader mask. And I would actually put it on.
Before you write, or when you're writing?
Yeah, no, I would wear while I'm writing.
Wow.
Not the entire time,
okay.
Just enough to get me going.
That's cool.
To get you past that, because again, it's the friction of the start that's the hardest part,
A lot
right?
of self-doubt. And they say writer's block is just you having too many expectations for what you're going to write anyways. I mean, it's just a mentality.
Yeah. And so Lord Vader's mask goes on, and then I write, and then it's look out. Now, I'm not writing with Lord Vader's words or anything like that. No, but it's that way that he would show up. Like, would he ever have writer's block?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, all these things. So when I put that on, it's
funny you say that.
But again, like, why not be fun with this stuff?
No,
right?
I agree.
Like, that's because again, I know myself as a youngster. I was a serious kid from the very start of my life, and maybe didn't smell the roses as much as I could have and should have when I was a kid. I battled depression all of my entire life. I had a very traumatic experience, a sexual assault that happened to me when I was 12 that really, sent me into a spiral, and, I had to battle suicide a lot through my teens and 20s. And, it's what's made me really good at the mental game and performance work is just an extraordinarily high level of compassion for other people. And, I have this issue with, it's very popular on social media to say, cut all the toxic people out of your life. And I think, no, you need to level up your skill set so that you can deal with toxic people in maybe a more compassionate way. Like, there are some people who are just, they are psychotically toxic. Those people, yeah, I'm gonna avoid them. But some people are just hurt, and literally nobody has come along and treated them with a little bit of kindness. So they're hurting you. Like, it happens to me at events. I'm not gonna be everyone's cup of tea, and someone comes up and they feel like it's their privilege to give me some advice or challenge me on something. Some people will do it in a nice way, and other people will do it in a very toxic way. And in that moment, I've got a choice. I can, tell them to beat it or whatever, or I can just have a conversation and get to know them better and see how I can help them. Because maybe I didn't help them on stage with the speech, but I only have 45 minutes. Maybe I can help them off the stage with it, right? And so I've had to step into that. Like, so that kind of idea that you got to cut all toxic people out of your life, I think is pretty weak. And it's actually what's setting, I think, society on a really poor course.
Right, of just getting in that retreating mode, that victim mode. Well, because everyone displays toxic behavior. You got to be able to know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But the reason I was chuckling to myself is that I have this course I teach usually in January called our Life Accelerator course, and I put people through about 24 high performance habits, and they go through a real tumultuous 8 weeks, and I ask them to answer 4 questions every week, and they are this: what are you afraid of? What makes you uncomfortable? What would a high performance person do? AKA, what would Dan Pena do? Mm-hmm. That's basically the Darth Vader mask I'm asking them to put on.
Yeah.
And then the last question is, what will you put on this planet to do?
Yeah.
But point number 3 is basically, without me knowing your IP, asking them to channel Dan Pena, who is actually worse than Darth Vader. He's probably killed more people than Darth Vader. Yeah. So it's like, what would he do? And I always tell people, would he be scared to go live on video? Would he be scared to go on? No. He would be, I'm on it. So how
people
can you
need to
him?
hear this? That's what he would be thinking. People need to hear this.
Yeah.
Because again, he would think so much of himself or his experiences that he needs to get that thing out there. And again, you said this before around the whole content stuff. If you're so concerned or you're kind of caught in the trap of not getting something out there, that's because your focus is very much on you rather than other people.
Totally.
Right?
That's what I said this to some students last night. I said, focus on that person out there you're going to help. I always say it's that old lady in Iowa who hasn't left her house and the drapes are closed for 7 days, and your video is going to come up and she's going to think, wow, man, that's really cool. Maybe I'm going to get out of my house today. Think about that person as opposed to how cool you're going to look.
Yeah.
And then that usually gets people out of that anxiety trap, which I guess is
it's
an
one
identity
tool.
thing too.
It's one thing, yeah.
Exactly. So you have 4 identities: Rogers, Vader, Hugh, Super Richard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In those 4 areas that are important for me right now.
Okay. And Geronimo, you retired because you don't have to go on the field anymore.
Yeah.
But you can channel bits of him when you need to.
Well, yeah, he's never gone.
Okay.
He's never gone. He's still in my arsenal and my weapons.
Now, for
sure.
people at home, and my wife's probably watching this at home, or she'll watch it later, and maybe I'm thinking of her, maybe there's some other people, they're thinking, okay, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where to start. I would guess for most people, they need to start with a high performance alter ego because, but how do people start?
So first, I mean, and again, alteregoeffect.com, or go to the book, or you buy it anywhere. It's everywhere, the Audible as well. But I have the entire, that's the one thing that I'm so happy with that I did with the book. Malcolm Gladwell, I got to talk to him when I was writing the book as well, and he gave me some really great advice and encouraged me to continue to push through on this. I don't know about you, but I always get frustrated when people sell a book and they're constantly like, but if you want more details, go to my workshop or something like that. No, all the process is in the book. Okay. All of it is there. Like I unpack everything for people. Naming it, naming the enemy and the shadow side as well. Because as human beings, we have this, once we give form and name and substance something, all of a sudden it's not as scary. It's like horror movies. I kind of talk about it in the book. In a horror movie, when's the scariest part of the horror movie? Like the first half, when you don't know, A, what the thing looks like, what's coming at you. All you hear is haunting sounds and creaks and cracks and things like that. But then all of a sudden when you can see it, you're like, oh, now I know how to beat that thing. Same thing in our own heads. And before I get to the whole what's the first step on this, I want to honor where this comes from. Like I didn't invent alter egos. Alter egos are they're a part of our human psyche. Everyone's used them. Like I was saying before, as kids, we did this thing naturally. Right. So the great thing I say, every single one of you here already knows how to do this. You've forgotten its use because you're trying to act through the adult ego, okay? And it traps you because the creative imagination is our real superpower as human beings. Yeah. That's the cape that we get to wear because that's the only thing that makes us different than everything else on the planet. We can tell stories and narratives. And the story and the narrative side of things is that secret link in this whole process here, which we'll walk through.
And people don't realize that enough. That's like one of the big things you say, that creative imagination is the thing we should focus on.
Yes.
Because that's what makes it different. That's how we can tell stories. That's how we put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
That's how we've shared information and how to live through generations before pen and paper or the printing press was ever developed, was through stories, right? And that's how we connect with cultures. And the more that we share other people's stories with each other, the more we find connection points. You're like, oh, that person's story isn't that much different than my story, just because they look different, they sound different, or whatever. We're actually more the same.
That's what we do here.
Yeah.
Once you hear someone's story, you realize they're just a different version of you that went through a different journey.
Exactly. You see a lot of yourself in that person.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.